And now we have Salih Guler from AWS to tell us more about AWS Amplify and Flutter. Salih, welcome to the stage.
Thank you very much. Yeah, but it's too warm for it, you know? Okay, let's give it a minute for the folks who are leaving or coming back. In the meantime, you can come forward or, just relax as you are as well. All right. So slowly we can get started. In the meantime, we wait, we can do some, we can get to know each other as well. So I'm Salih, and I work with AWS, Amazon Web Services. And what we do is we are basically doing everything cloud. We are focusing on right now basically what we can do to make your life easier to scale upper. And if you're into business and haven't heard of AWS, I'm here for your questions, and there's also an Amazon booth for the folks from our other teams that can help you out as well. My focus is on teaching people about how they can use cloud technologies by using AWS and mobile applications. And why do I think that I can teach people that? The main reason is before that I have been a mobile developer for more or less 10 years before that. And I have worked in different scale companies. I worked in startups. I worked in agencies. I worked in basically products that reached out to the millions of users. And I've seen many struggles that were quite problematic along the way. And what I have been doing was, I've been doing this for free for many years. I've been going to the conferences, giving talks, and teaching people about mobile technologies. And 2 years ago, I joined AWS to make it my day-to-day job to increase my reach. And this way, I would get to know the people like you. So today, what we are going to do, first, we will talk about the idea stage of when you have an idea, how you move forward, what excites you, and so on. Second, we will talk about strategy, what to do with your idea. Then we will combine these two together and see how you can implement this with AWS Amplify and Flutter. If you have not heard about any of these two, don't worry, we will do a brief introduction to these. And our focus will be on how you can use this fast, easy, and I would like to get you to a position that you can move forward technically at this stage as well. Lastly, we will talk about the production stage of it, how you can release these applications and how you can move forward with it. So let's start with the idea. From the idea perspective, I'm sure everyone is sitting at home sometimes, getting a coffee, getting tea, whatever it is, and you're thinking, I have an idea. Actually, let me check this out. Does this idea made by someone else? And most likely you will not be able to find someone else, even though there is someone else. And you say, okay, you know what? I can actually make a lot of money out of this. I can be rich. Or if you are more idealist, you can say, I can change the world. So good thing about this is it will motivate you a lot. You will start dreaming. You will say, yes, I can do this. I can change the world. Yes, I will make a lot of money. I will be on vacation forever. But the reality hits you really fast, and you will say, but how? How am I going to do that? And the idea of this talk is to actually give you the direction for it with the simple technologies like Flutter and AWS Amplify. So next stage is the strategy. You're overwhelmed with this idea. You want to do something, but you don't know how. Mainly, people come up with these ideas. They go to, for example, independent developers, agencies, or they just sit down and try to learn about any technology that can help them out. So what are the most important things when you go to the market? There are many things, like you have seen in the previous talk as well, probably, but there are many things that can change the strategy of your application. The first thing is monetization. Monetization is basic, we make a living out of these apps or ideas. We need to make a living out of it if we want a roof on top of ourselves, right? And monetization is really important. How you can turn this thing into money is really valuable for you. The second thing is going to the market. Going to market is, when you have an idea, I'm sure we have seen this as well, many great ideas so far, they have been crashed and burned burned multiple times. And the reason is that they didn't have the proper going-to-market strategies. They didn't know their audience. They didn't know how to affect them. And not knowing your audience is a big problem because that will really block your progress. So that is why you need to know your audience. You need to have a proper go-to-market strategy and understand how you can reach out to these folks. And you need to be scalable. What happens when you have 10,000 users, 100,000 users, 1 million users? What happens when you have more and more features? What happens when you have more and more requests from people? How to do it? And in my opinion, from the engineering perspective, everything goes back to the last point, the tech stack. Tech stack needs to be your ally, needs to be your hero. Whenever you need something, you need to be sure that it will be there to help you out. You need to be sure that it will be there to take you to the position or place that you want to be. So that is why I said, okay, let's put the deciding on tech stack into 3 different tiers. And for AWS Amplify, Flutter, or whatever you have, we will use these 3 important points. First one is rapid prototyping. There are 2 important things. You can have a good idea, you need to be fast, and you need to implement it right. How to do it fast? You need to implement an MVP. You need to have actually a product that it can be easily used in the most basic way. And how you can do it? You can do it by quickly iterating. Time to value. You need to understand that you cannot implement an application alone. You cannot implement an application without using external services or additional features and so on and so forth. That is why you need to understand that the technology that you will be using in any case should save you a lot of time in the long run. And lastly, I want to emphasize on scalability. Scaling is really important and something that has been going on a lot. And I know, by the way, I just jumped in, so I need to get my audience, get to know my audience as well. So how many of you are students? How many of you are developers? Nice. So mainly we have developers. How many of you are mobile developers? Okay, last question. How many of you know Flutter? Perfect. Why the mobile developers don't see themselves as Flutter developers? You are both. Some of the hands didn't raise when I said Flutter and mobile. So, as many of you know, you are developers, and how many of you go to your boss and said, okay, this is not scaling up. We need to write this again. How many of you were in this position? 0? Okay. Okay, 2. You're in a really lucky position. Every company that I've worked with so far, when they scale to the 1 million users, after a point, they have seen that the tech stack they're in were not working. They were like, hey, we need to change this up. And there were many rewrites that were happening. So scalability is a really important point for your application as well. All right. So why Flutter? Let's talk about this one. For the folks who has not heard of Flutter, Flutter is Google's portable UI toolkit for creating beautiful, natively compiled applications for mobile, web, and desktop. In a simple manner, what Flutter does is you write the code once in a single code base, and you will deploy your application to any place that you want it to be. How Flutter apps help you out with 3 perspectives. First, rapid prototyping. Flutter has something called hot reload. Thanks to this and its advanced caching mechanism, you can iterate fast, you can make changes and move forward. And with the tooling that it has, you can make on-the-spot changes on your UI and actually iterate faster and faster. The second point is Flutter actually gives you a lot of out-of-the-box widgets. So you can get these points, get these UI elements, put it to your screen, and it will be ready to use. Lastly, next, time to value. Flutter actually has a lot of integrations with a lot of libraries. So whatever you want to do, for example, you want to have a payment element, you can actually add it by using a library because Flutter ecosystem has a library ecosystem that you can use. And this library ecosystem is helpful for you to move forward. And next, scalability. Flutter, when people come to me, they're like, okay, Flutter can scale. Can Flutter scale to 1 million users and so on and so forth? The answer is yes. Flutter is used by many companies, including Google itself. There are more than 1 million applications out there written by Flutter. And for example, in here, I've seen Talabat, and I know Talabat is using Flutter as well. So many big companies, many enterprises right now from like Microsoft to Google, and I don't like many, like including ourselves. Like in AWS, we have also a lot of investment in the Flutter side too. So rapid prototyping, it checks out. Time to value, it checks out. Scalability, it has proven with many different cases like BMW, Google, etc., it checks out as well. So Flutter can help you out to move forward. How to use Flutter? Flutter is highly CLI and tooling oriented, so you will not be doing a lot of heavy work. I have worked with all the mobile platforms so far in my career and web as well. And from the setup point of view, if you just install the CLI of Flutter, it will direct you to app creation phase the fastest. So if you do Flutter create and best to do app, so as you know, when you have an application, you want to test it with to-do app, so that we will create the best to-do app with Flutter. So how you do it is Flutter, which is the CLI name, and the create command of it to create an application. So obviously, I'm not going to take you through the process of creating and so on and so forth. This is a whole another talk. But the thing is, one thing that you need to understand here is Flutter is a CLI and tooling-oriented thing that you can take and move forward without, tiring yourself. Flutter is creating its UI elements by something called widgets. These UI elements can be thought as in two categories. One of them is stateless, which is basically showing the information that you provide. The other one is called stateful. The stateful widgets are used to change something on the screen, and it will be used to it will be changing this by calling a function called setState. So if you're coming from a framework like React, you would know that, hey, like it is similar. The idea is, yes, it is similar to React and many other frameworks, because Flutter developers or Flutter creators, they want to have a familiar environment for everyone who is willing to do applications. By the way, like you will be seeing a lot of really ugly doodling. Probably you've seen already as well. If you see super ugly things, it is from me. I recently purchased an iPad and I said, okay, like why not use it in the presentation? So if you see super ugly things and can't read it, just raise your hand. But like I will try to highlight things with my amazing drawing skills here. So let's carry on. So another amazing drawing, as you can see. Flutter is actually you will be using these widgets, these UI elements in the Lego format, like you know the building blocks. What you will be doing is you will be gathering things together and combining those into a composition of a UI. Because Flutter is using the architectural decision of composition over inheritance. So you will not be inheriting the views, but you will be actually getting these UI elements and combining those into a composition of a screen. So you will have, for example, button, text, images, and all of these will come together into a screen. For example, in the previous stateful widget example, you can have a button will have a text, and how you combine this is actually, once you have a child, there is a text, and you will just combine this into one element that is going to be showing a text inside a button. So, let's continue with AWS Amplify. We've done an introduction to the Flutter. So AWS Amplify, how many of you have heard of AWS Amplify before? Perfect. So I've seen 4 people. AWS Amplify is actually the tool that we created to make front-end developers' lives easier. How do we do this? The cloud itself is a big, big knowledge base, and it is really hard for many folks to just go and learn cloud. So what do? We said, okay, we will provide you tools that you can use by either CLI or UI elements that we give you, and you don't need to deal with the cloud. We will be taking care of everything for you. What we do is you will select everything. I will show you how you can do it in a second. We will select everything for you, and we will deploy and create your resources on the cloud for you. So as a mobile developer, as a front-end developer, you don't need to carry on with complicated stuff. So how do you do this? Sorry, before we see how do we do this, what do we support? We support literally everything that you have. So you can, I just put like 4 of the most used ones. Like we support authentication, GraphQL and REST API storage, push notifications, yes. But in addition to this, for example, we have in-app messaging, geo for maps. We also have predictions for AI ML capabilities and many, many more capabilities alongside it. Why the categories are important? Because you will be implementing these with the CLI tool that I will be showing you in a second, and the communication between these elements to your front end will be happening with something we call libraries. You will be writing your code in the platform that you're in, and everything else will be dealt by us. So, from the tech stack selection perspective, let's see how the AWS Amplify works. AWS Amplify is easy to set up. You will be using npm to just install your CLI application. You will configure your AWS resources without any hassle, so you will be moving fast. Time to value, you will be adding everything that you need more and more in the scenario that you want to achieve. And scalability, it is not science, it is not black magic behind the scenes. What we do is we are still using AWS, and AWS is known for its scalability to any point that you want. For example, when you want to save your files, we are saving those into something called Amazon S3. And in Amazon S3, the accessibility percentage of it is like 99%. So it is really, really hard. There's a really, really hard chance that it will fail. When it happens, the whole world turns upside down anyway. So from the selection criteria, AWS Amplify can help you out to move forward with your decision as well, with your idea as well. So now let's see the implementation. First, how you can install the AWS Amplify CLI tool. You will be doing npm install. npm is a node package manager, and install the CLI application. Once you install that, you will configure it by connecting it to your AWS account. One good thing about AWS Amplify CLI tooling is it is an interactive tool that will take you through from point A to point B by directing you with questions that you can answer by selecting the options that you have. So you will not be able to derail yourself out of your options. You will know what you will have at the end of the day. So it is quite intuitive. And once you configure your Amplify CLI, you will go to your any project that you have and say Amplify init. It will say, okay, the project that I'm in now is an Amplify backend project. It will ask you a few questions. The most important ones are these three. First one is the name of your application. You can name it anything that you want, or it will give you also a default name that you can pick as well. The second thing is it will give you default options, and the most beautiful thing about that is that it will understand the platform that you're in. So since it will understand the platform that you're in, it will be giving you options to create these resources. And lastly, it will say which AWS profile you would like to use. And according to the profile you would like to use, it will take those resources into that region or into that platform. And once deployment is successful, when you select these options, it will do the initial deployment, initial cloud resources creation, and you're ready to add your libraries. First, let's see how you can add authentication. Amplify CLI has many commands that you can use, but again, the important word here is intuitivity. So it is super intuitive that you will say, I want to add an authentication to the Amplify. Amplify add auth. And once you do that, it will ask you, again, a few questions. It will first let you know that you will be using Amazon Cognito. It is the identity provider from Amazon that helps you out with management of your users. It will say, okay, you can use default configuration. We will provide you the password, the way of signing in and everything, or you can do manually as well. The default is always nice. It will give you two-factor activation of your application, so when your user creates actually an account, they will get an activation email, activation step, so on and so forth. You can also select the way of login. I've selected username here, but you can select email, phone number, whatever you need as well. And once you do that, that's it. Now your authentication is ready to be used. The second thing that we are going to be adding is API. For adding an API, you can select either a GraphQL API or REST API, whatever makes sense to you. GraphQL API is something that I really like because according to what you need, you can customize the queries as much as you want. There are a lot of debates about GraphQL and so on. I'm not going to go into this, but from many perspectives, there are a lot of wins from the GraphQL. So you can also define authorization rules as well. You can reach out to your data by going with the API key. You can say that, hey, if the user is in my user pool, I would like to also let that know that I want this user to have an access to my data too. And lastly, it will tell you, you can have a schema that you can start off with, or you can have a blank one as well, to get you going. So in case you're wondering, hey, how I'm going to move forward, you can select this one as well. So once you select those, you're ready as well with your API. Again, you answer questions, you set up things, and we move forward. And lastly, storage. What do we want to store here? Do we want to store content, like images, or like audio, video, or even we can use this S3 or like storage phase as content delivery networks to host your website, or you can also have NoSQL databases here too. And the next important thing is who should have access to these files or anything at all. You can define guest access or authenticated access. It is up to you. And you can define partial access as well. You can say, from authenticated users, they can create, delete, update, but guests, they should only be able to read it. You can define any rule from the CLI with the questions that it asks you. And, OK, this is wrong. So this is wrong, but let's say, why do I have this? Anyway, normally, if you want to push these into the cloud, you will be obviously saying Amplify push because of the intuitivity. You are not going to add the storage again. So that is why when you want to push these changes to the cloud, when you have these, because right now you have every setup that you need to be used locally, but you want to share it with all of your users. And when you want to do it, you will do it by Amplify push. And once you do the Amplify push, it will take you to the deployment stage. It will create every resources that you need. It will show you what it is doing. It is creating, for example, user pools. It is creating the bucket that you need to keep your files. And when everything is done, it will say, every deployment is successful. Now you can continue. And once the deployment is successful, you can go back and check out what you have deployed from your GraphQL schema. How many of you have worked with GraphQL before? Our GraphQL version is actually a similar one to the regular one, but we have a way to make it more customizable because of the authorization flows that we have. So normally, GraphQL is, again, a query language that helps you out to get either partial, the whole data, whatever you need, by defining the graphs of the data, or the layers, or the familiarity of the data. So once you push these changes, you will see that actually what you pushed is this one. You will have an ID, name, and description in the types of string and ID. And we say that this is a model with an annotation here. This is a really important one. The reason is that we define these as models, so this way, you will be able to generate the front-end code for this. So if you update this, for example, with this one, like title is finished and has file, what you will do is you'll say Amplify Gen models to generate every front-end code that you will be using for this to-do model. And how you use it is you will be adding the libraries that I mentioned. For the Flutter projects, you will be adding Flutter libraries. The Flutter libraries are the helpers to get you to the cloud. So for example, we have Amplify Flutter for core operations, API for any API operation like GraphQL or REST. We have auth for authentication purposes, and storage for any file operation that you have. How you use it is, first, you need to configure your Amplify project. You need to define the libraries that you are going to be using to be in control of whatever you are going to be using. So you create the Amplify API information and options. You say that, OK, I will be using Cognito. It will go back to your configuration file and get this information. And lastly, it will make it ready for you to be used. If you don't do this before the app runs or before the usage, the app will say, why didn't you configure Amplify? It will break, which is normal, because if you don't configure, it shouldn't work. So let's add the authentication flow. For adding the authentication flow, we are going to be using a library that we provide that is called Authenticator. Authenticator is part of a set of UI libraries that we provide to the users that is automating your UI flow by getting the cloud information that you have used. So when you say Amplify Authenticator, what you're going to be doing is you will be adding one line of code here, which is called Authenticator. And it is actually going to take care of everything for you. Sign up, sign in, and two-factor authentication, forget password, anything. Also, it will help you out to use the functions that you have for authentication as well. So you don't need to only define on it. You need to know that it is 100% customizable, but it will hook into your system directly. So it will look like this. It will be using mainly the material design or elements to have it on the screen, but one more time, it is 100% customizable, every element here. And if you click on this button, you can see, like, if you see the button on the top right, you can see that you can add any element, you can add the functionality into it, and it will still be part of the authentication flow that we have added with that one line. So let's see how you can create elements on the API layer. What you do is, first, you need to define what kind of operation you want to do. In the number one, you can see that I want to create something. And inside it, you actually create an object, a simple object that you have generated. And once you define the creation operation, second thing that you do is call a function called Amplify API Mutate. Amplify API Mutate is using an approach with the static function calls that can intuitively take you through the process of calling an operation. So if you want to do authentication, you have done Amplify Auth. If you want to do API, you did Amplify API. And once you do that, it will take your request, do it, and return a value for you by making this operation asynchronously. If you want to do update or delete, instead of create, you will be writing update or delete or whatever you need. But you don't need to always create it, obviously. You can also listen to the changes as well. How you do it is, you can listen to the operations in the format. Like, for example, if you want to, you can listen to the creation operations. So every time there's a new object, you will have an information. But you can also listen to the update and delete operations as well. For the file, you can use any file pickers that you have. It is up to you. Once you have the file path, what you will be doing is you will get the path from the device, and you will save it into the path that you define. Normally, before, we were saving these under S3s, public, private, and protected layers, but we have changed this like really recently. We said, okay, people should be able to save it anywhere they want, and they will define who can access it. And one big thing about Amazon S3 is it has multi-part upload, meaning that you can pause the upload process, you can have momentary updates, and you can show the user any changes that they have. And for getting the URL, you will get a signed URL, so you will be safe. Any user that you define will see it, not just random person that has the link to your resources. Okay, from the earlier one, we had the rapid prototyping, time value, and scalability, everything checked out. But the time to value is a highly debatable thing. And when I joined AWS, it's a funny story. I was actually debating about this as well. Because one comment that I read on Reddit about AWS Amplify was perfect for me. AWS Amplify is perfect for the scenarios that you know what you're doing. But in the future, if you want to extend it to something that is completely unexpected, you can still do it with AWS Amplify, but it will take you a lot of time. The biggest example is this AI ML thing going on right now. And if you want this to be working with AWS Amplify, I mean, you said you're working with it. If you want to go off the books, it is crazy hard if you don't know what you're doing. That is why, actually, this is the first time that I'm going to be talking about this, because this week we had a big release with AWS Amplify. It is called Amplify Gen 2. With Amplify Gen 2, we literally changed the way that we did everything. The important point was the extensibility, the scalability, and the developer experience. What we did, we have integrated CI/CD pipelines into Amplify Gen 2, not just the hosting, but also deploying to the backend as well. But we also eliminated the CLI part that I've shown you. Why did I show you? Because it is still a valuable thing, because the important point here is, if you don't want to use the CLI, you need to use TypeScript. You will be using TypeScript to define your backend, and you will be provisioning many things. Why is it important, or why should you use Gen 2, or when should you use Gen 2 or Gen 1 is, if you know TypeScript, it is perfect for you, because if you want to implement these features, you will be defining it with the tools that we have. And thanks to the tools like Amazon Q, for example, in your IDE, you will have direct help inside your IDE for creating your data layer, authentication, and many more. So let's see how it looks like in this phase. We don't have sound, so I will do the sound. So if you go to the website today, you will see that like we have built full stack apps fast, because our idea right now is highly focused on creating full stack applications by using one or maybe like maximum 2 languages. So you can go to the console, AWS console now, select your application from GitHub, and directly deploy it on point in your application. And we have changed the way that it looks as well, because AWS console is always complicated for folks coming from front-end environment. So we want to show how easy it is. You will be defining your schema. I will show it as well, how you do the to-do app in a second too. And you will be defining your schema by using TypeScript with the tooling that we provide to you. And you will be having features like relationships or authorization rules and many other more as well. And more importantly, something to mention here is that you will not just have the data layer, you will have authentication functions. And the biggest thing about this new rewrite is, it is using something called CDK, Cloud Development Kit. It is the helper tool that AWS has for you to create applications that is using infrastructure from code. So you will write your code and infrastructure will go to the cloud. So this way, whatever you have created will be used in a programming language that you know, and whatever you want to add from this point onwards with AWS is available for you. So in case we don't support AI, I will show you in a second how you can add it quickly. So let's move forward. You can move forward, yes. So first thing, we don't need the CLI, right? How you do it? npm create amplify. This is your friend. This is what you will be using. And once you do that, you will not be seeing crazy logs anymore. It will say, we are adding these libraries, and welcome to AWS Amplify. Biggest advantage of Gen 2 is you have now local sandbox environments. So you don't need to push to the production all the time. You will be having your changes running on your local machine, and when you're done, all the resources will be deleted. And how you do it is exactly like this. You will define your auth, and you will define whatever you want to log in with. You want to log in with email, just say true. You want to log in with social, write Google, and add the secret and the key for it. And how you define your data, you will say that this is schema, the name of it, and this is a model. You will be using an intuitive way again. You will say this is string, the title is a string, and it is required or not, and you will have your authorization rules already there as well. So the previous app that we have is turning into this. And next, you will be defining, we will be automatically generating the code for you for like TypeScript with the helper functions or your model classes for Flutter. But how it does is it's actually getting your TypeScript file, going through it, and generating everything that you have. And at the end of the day, you will be having your storage as well as your functions as well. For example, you want to check out some triggers. Hey, before I create the user, I want to check if this user is like older than 13, for example. And if it's not, your function will not let it create an application. Before, you needed to hook in the Lambda functions, and you need to write a lot of business logic yourself. For example, AI. I mean, Amazon Bedrock is the biggest thing right now. It is using and providing almost every large language model that you have out there and how you want to connect to it. You will get your backend and you will say create a stack because it is actually using CDK behind the scenes. A building block in CDK is called stack. And you'll say, I want to add this into this. You can get your front-end data here in your code. You can create Lambda functions as well as you can create API gateway, whatever you need. It is like you can make it super complicated if you want it to get complicated. And once you have that, what you will be doing is, you will just create your prompt, which is one thing that I learned with prompt engineering is like you need to be super specific. If you don't write all of these things, it will at the end of the day, will be doing, for example, when you say create 4 options, it will create the same 4 options again. Yeah, AI will definitely take our jobs. And you need to be specific, but once you select the model ID and everything, it will return whatever you want. And how you do the local sandbox environment, after you create all of these things, you'll be doing npx, ampx sandbox, and you can define your output format, or it will understand it as well. So, with the implementation layer, now we know how you can move forward with Amplify and Amplify Gen 2 at this stage. The production side is really important because like with the CI/CD pipelines coming with both Gen 2 or whatever provider that you have, having something like GitHub Actions running your resources as well as deploying your backend is really valuable. So you can run your tests, build your application, and publish it. Why the CI/CD pipelines that are like this are valuable? Because when you deploy your application without automation, it is a pain. And especially when the automation comes, when the feedback comes back, it will annoy you the most. So that is why using tools like Bitrise, GitHub Actions, or there is something called Code Magic that is highly focusing on Flutter. It will help you out to hook into your system, whatever it is. For example, you can have GitHub directly connected to it, and it will take it to anything that you have. Like for Android, obviously, it will be Google Play Store. For iOS or macOS, it will be Apple App Store. Or for Windows, you will go to the Microsoft Store. Or for example, Linux, you can go to the Snap Store. Again, one advantage of Flutter is everything that you have here with the tools that I've shown you is one click away to be deployed. So, I want to slowly wrap things up. So first, what we have learned today. We have learned, for the folks at least like have not heard about it, we have learned what Flutter is, what are the basic building blocks, and how you can create UIs with my beautiful drawing. And second thing is we talked about AWS Amplify Gen 1 with CLI and how you can have an intuitive way of creating backend, as well as we talked about Amplify Gen 2, a way to create applications by defining your infrastructure from your code. And lastly, briefly, we have talked about publishing your applications and which platforms that Flutter supports you to deploy your applications there. So, these are 2 QR codes. I generally fill these out with a lot of links. If you want to learn about AWS Amplify or Flutter, you will be finding these Google Docs links helpful for you. I will wait for a second. I'm seeing some phones are up. Okay. It is done. Perfect. So, before I wrap it up, I want to try something new today because this presentation is quite new, quite exciting for me because I'm talking about the release that we have today. This is a Google form thing. You can give me your feedback about how the presentation went for you. Was it too technical or not? I put some points. Please select anything that applies. I'm not going to be heartbroken or crying in front of you at least. Maybe I'll do it at home. But please fill it out, let me know. And if you have any questions, if you want to be in contact with me, I am basically Salih Guler like this, everywhere, like LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever it is. You can ask me anything. I am highly approachable. I'm not going to act like hiding over there. I think I will be hanging around Amazon booth a bit. But overall, thank you very much for sticking around. I know back-to-back are really hard. Thank you very much for listening to me.